So we're live on this one. We're live on that one. Okay, cool. Test 1, 2. Okay, hello everyone. We are doing our second real estate workshop for Custom Life Realty Group. It's me and Tori here today.
Hi.
And we're gonna talk about what we go over when we set up your home search. So it's made up of a few different things. Typically when we're going over someone's home search, we want to talk about area, price, and then minimum bedrooms, minimum bathrooms. And it's important that we go with the minimums because obviously if we can find something within your price range and area that's beyond that, I'm sure, most people wouldn't mind an extra.
That's great.
Yeah, bedroom or bathroom. So when it comes to area, price, beds and baths, if we put all that into our little system and we're not coming up with many results, like we're not seeing what we want to see, we were hoping for HGTV, we're not seeing it.
Right.
We're gonna want to add some locations. That's the bit, we either need to change price or change location. Or obviously lower the size of the house, like let's go from 3 baths to 2. Usually we don't mess with that too much because when people come to us, they're gonna say like, well, we have to have, 2 bathrooms, we have 7 kids or whatever. So typically we're gonna go to, can we mess with price at all? No, we can't. Okay, let's look at location. One thing that I think you would agree is we don't typically do much with square footage. Just because
I feel like a lot of people have that in mind when they're when we first sit down with them.
And I'm always curious like where people
come up with that.
Yes, because I've been in so many houses and depending on the layout, 1,000 square feet can feel so different in, 4 completely different houses.
Right, if you have an open floor plan or if it's more choppier.
Yep. Lower ceilings make it feel smaller. If you have a Cape Cod style house, you might have, 1,000 square feet, but you might have 2 extra bedrooms upstairs.
Right.
So, or you could have an 1,000 square foot house that has 2 bedrooms total. There's just so many different variants when it comes to square footage. So I know that some people have an idea in their mind.
Or what kind of square footage they want.
Yes, but like I like to try and take that away.
And I try to ask, like, what do you need in that square footage? Are you looking for an office space? Do you need a guest room or a den? Or like, what are they wanting out of that space? I guess is the first question to navigate that. And
some houses too have, like you just said, like you've got a family room, you've got a living room, you've got an extra office, you've got a workout spot. You have so many areas that it's like, okay, maybe the square footage is large, but the bedroom count's not adding up.
Right.
That's one variable I don't love to put into.
Or if you need a playroom or an office that's separate from the rest of the house. So everybody, like when you're in the office and you've got other people living in your home, you need that separate space. Like, it matters. Yeah, so that's something that I try to steer people away from, although it is something we can obviously use when we're making a search. I don't think it gives us too much help. Right. Unless we've seen several houses at a certain square footage and we're like, those just all feel too small, it's not gonna work for us. Sometimes under 1,000 square feet, some people are just like, I need more storage, that's not gonna work. Yeah. Understandable. But finding out like what they need out of that square footage or why they have that idea in their head. Yep. And another thing that we can do, and this is if we're, on a budget and we think we need 2 full baths and we're not totally finding what we need, if you can take that down to 1.5 bath, so you still have the 2 toilets, so that if 2 people need to use the restroom they can, but we're only having 1 shower. And sometimes it takes like seeing a couple of houses at that price point, and like for us in our search, I don't know if it was the same for you, but we were looking at 1.5 baths at first, and I mean it's different for other people too. Right. But the 1.5 could sometimes work better for us because it was a nicer home and we didn't have to put as much into it once we moved in, like fixing it up and yeah, so if you can make those,
I like to do this, like when we start off with our search, we start with the ideal, depending on your timeline. If you're like, you know, we got to move in 30 days, well then we're going to make the range as wide as we can because we need all the options. But if we're working with, you know, 2 to 3 months, 2 to 6 months, we can start off with your ideal search and we can adjust it at any time. So if we decide like, hey, we might be open to 1.5 baths, you know, we're not seeing the condition we were hoping for, what can we do to kind of stretch that? Like Tori just said, we can adjust that so that it kind of helps with condition of the house and you might be fine with it. Another thing that people often want in homes that sometimes we can't put into a search, fenced in backyards. Technically, we do have a spot on our search we can put that in. The reason I don't love it is because
you're not seeing anything else that you could put a fence into.
Right. Yeah. You might have your dream house that, let's just say, for example, you already have your closing costs ready, but you don't have anything outside of that. Well, let's negotiate in, you know, $5,000 of closing costs so that way.
Let's save you money for this house so you can put a fence around.
Yeah, let's get you the perfect house and put a fence in. I just don't want to rule a house out based on it not having a fence.
Another thing, which is a little bit more, it's harder because there might be a purpose for that, is a garage.
Yeah, garage.
Like that is always.
And this guys always want a garage. It's like they think house and they immediately go to garage. It doesn't even enter my brain. I mean, I just have no use for one.
Right.
So.
And it's based on what they need it for and what they use it for.
Yes.
Like if you're like hobbyist to renovate cars, like you might need.
Right.
You know.
Or yeah, if you have a lawn care business and you need to store stuff at your house, that's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
But I think if your purpose is just.
But I guess it's also asking like how important that is in the beginning.
Yeah. And you know, some of us, like maybe you grew up with a garage, it's just customary to have one, but we could see a lot more houses if we take that garage out of search. So that's something that also, depending on our price point, I might be like, hey, I can put this, but you're going to get 2 results.
Right.
So yeah, a garage.
Or you're not going to get the location you want.
Right. Yeah, we might be out in the boonies or something. Right. Garage is definitely a good point. Things that are more cosmetic, we can't put into a search. So we can keep an eye on it for. Tori's really good at this. She goes through every day and she's like, oh, this person would love that house. Oh, Betsy, what about this buyer? They would love this. But as far as like open floor plan, everyone loves an open floor plan, or like you were saying,
or like a renovated kitchen. Everybody loves a kitchen renovated.
Or like if you have kids and you need the separate playroom, you need a separate office, you might not want that huge open floor plan. Exactly. So those things we cannot put in when we're sending you emails of just what's coming on the market.
It's just generic.
Yeah, so you might get some houses that you're like, oh my gosh, Betsy just emailed me this dump, and it's really just that was happened to be in your price range, you know, in your area.
We put in.
Right. So you kind of have to sift through it a little. What are some other things? So we can always put a pool on there. I've never actually. I had one client who was really set on a pool, and the issue was it kept also showing condos that had like huge, you know, so and I'm like, I don't think, I don't think that's what we were looking for. Waterfront, you had someone recently.
Waterfront is very hard.
Yeah, we can do waterfront. We can limit, so we can draw on the map, which you did, and limit it to
a specific
area
if you're wanting to stay on a certain, you know, river, lake or something like that.
Because otherwise, if we
we market waterfront, you can get a pond.
Yeah, you can get a little. There's a little creek through your yard. Yeah.
So.
And sometimes some of these get checked by accident. I talked to a guy today actually about a listing, and he was like, "Just let you know, it needs HVAC." And I was like, "Hmm?" And he's like, "Yeah, there's no HVAC." And I was like, "Oh, you put that it has electric and it's central air." And he's like, "Oh, did I?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So like just like this, someone could mismark that. Like somebody could accidentally put a garage, and then you're getting emailed, you know, a listing that you're not interested in or whatever. Trying to think what else. As far as it goes with price, so let's say that we've capped ourselves at 300, and you actually have a pre-approval for 450, but you don't want to go that high because of monthly payment or whatever. Right. In order to really make a difference in the listings you're getting emailed, I would say rule of thumb is we'd have to go up about 25,000. It's not to say that there's not going to be a listing that comes in at 309. Of course there will be, but to see a pretty good, adjustment of, oh, okay, the condition's better. There's the full second bath that I want. Those types of things, we're going to have to jump up at least 25,000. Now,
and like say your ceiling's like 300, we want to do a search like to 275 because you're gonna have to come and bring that.
Right.
Usually.
Depending
unless
on,
it's set for a little bit.
And you're exactly right. If it's gonna be like, if we're like, okay, you want to be in West End and we're looking at 250, which is that's really that might not be practical. Let's say 350.
You and everyone.
So in certain areas, we definitely will do that where we're like, okay, so we're gonna send you, $25,000 under your budget, knowing that every listing in the last 90 days has gotten, 10 offers. We just don't want to, send you stuff that...
We don't want to set the expectation.
Right. You get a new, beautiful listing and there's 48 showings, there's an open house and they're viewing offers Monday and you're not prepared. That's at the max of your budget. It just wastes someone's time to go see it. Like, I don't want to take them out there.
And it breaks their heart.
Right, yeah. So, sometimes we definitely do that. I'm trying to think of other criteria and things to think about. I think most people know, like, you get into a house, you can paint it. I think that most people are pretty good at looking past that.
I think sometimes people have a hard time. They have an idea of what kind of home they want. So it takes a minute to start looking at stuff and seeing what it's like being in this price range that you're at to see, to understand, like, you're not going to get your cute little brick rancher that
Right.
I think I think people sometimes have an idea of what their house should look like.
Oh, totally. I think so. Tori and I definitely work with a lot of first-time home buyers, and that's always something that we have to. Our expectation is so high, and it's so exciting. You're house shopping. You're like, this is gonna be the best thing ever.
I feel like people really like the idea of a Cape Cod too. They're like, I want a Cape Cod, and you're like, okay, is there a reason for that?
Right. Well, and it's a couple things. One, it's the last house you probably lived in prior to this, like, that someone owned was your parents. So that's like at the end of, they're older. That's probably the nicest house they've had in their lifetime. And the other things we see are TV. And TV is always like, we see like, oh, we took this thing that was in the dump and now it's beautiful. We see these renovations. And so everyone gets in their mind,
the HGTV special.
Yeah, and for me, like, I'm always thinking, I'm gonna have parties, I'm gonna have people over. The guest room, that's one thing that I've talked to people about. Like, you can make your guest room an office too, because you're not gonna have guests as often as you think. I used to always think, I was like, oh, the guest room needs to be so nice. Like, I'm always gonna have guests, And I just didn't end up taking that much advantage of it. So, trying to think of other things that we can't, we've kind of hit on this, but we can't put condition in. So we can't put, like, even if the listing says this house is selling as is, no one's making repairs, we have no way to filter that out. And I should say too, the benefit of us having the MLS and setting up a search that is automatic within your criteria is that even though Tori and I go through listings and we're like,
and just because we set you up on a search doesn't mean we're also personally looking for you too.
Yeah, that's what I'm, Tori's really good at knowing exactly, like, you'll get to know, you'll get to know someone and you're like, oh, they would love this doorway, they'd love, like, I can picture, their dogs out back. And so we're looking through the MLS, we're also looking on off-market stuff for you, but the automatic email sends you an email as soon as something's listed within your criteria, and as soon as, like, if there's a price drop or if something comes back on the market. And we would not be able to keep up with that quick enough. So
because we want you to have that as soon as possible. Like, as soon as something hits, we want you to know. Or as soon as there's a price drop, we want, if you're interested in seeing it or have been stalking it, like, as soon as that hits, you'll know.
Right. And then, typically I just tell clients whatever is easiest, but screenshot it to me and I'll get more info. We'll get it showing ASAP, because the quicker we can get you out there, the better chance we have of getting, an offer in first and getting the house for you. So, I think that's a good thing to know in the automatic search, because it definitely can be thought of as like that we don't ever look at it, but we
Right.
definitely do.
Yeah.
We're definitely still looking at stuff.
Right.
Other things within a search that I hit on.
I guess we can talk about like price drops. Is like a lot of people really like to do that 259 or like the 9 number, and that's why we kind of ask where your ceiling's at. So we know that at 250, like you'll still get the searches at 259 or whatever the price is. It's the 9, and a lot of agents when they list use that tactic.
Yeah. So if someone's search is up to 250, if I have a listing that the comps are all right around 250, I'm probably going to list it 249 so that everyone within, their search going up to 250 gets that listing.
Because I've
everyone
had
in the above
ask,
ceiling.
like, what is that? So it's an odd number.
It gets it out to more people.
It's more exposure.
And
for
a
that
lot of
listing.
people, for some reason, cap their prices typically around 25, 50, 75, or 400, whatever that number is. So it's just getting it out to the max number of people that we can. What would you say? I'm trying to think of. What do you do if someone's just like, the area is not good, the price is not good?
I guess my first question is like, what do you want out of the area? What is the reason? Like, is it like, you want to stay in a certain school district? Do you have kids, or is it a close commute to your work? Or what is the reason for you to stay in this search? Or like, do you want to be X amount of miles to the nearest Target? Or like, just
Tori would.
Yeah, exactly. Just figuring out what it is that why they want to stay in that area, and like sometimes you can like push them into a different area, or like something that they haven't thought of, or a neighborhood that they haven't thought of yet. Yeah,
I am like the rare breed that falls in love with the house, not the area, but I'm changing. I'm learning on that because
I'm
now
mad about that too.
I once lived in Chester because I loved the house, and then I was like, wow, I'm really far from everything. I once lived in Goochland, and now I live just in Rico, like West End area. So, and I sort of I love that area because it's convenient. I don't think I valued that prior.
And I guess knowing if they're looking for the house or the location, the area, like what's more important.
But also with my first house, it made more sense for me to enjoy the house and compromise on the location because the price point was great. Like I felt like I got a ton of house for what I was paying.
Right.
And sometimes you just have to do that.
Yeah.
But you could also do the reverse, which is we have to be in this location because of a school district or work or, a grandparent you're taking care of, whatever it is. And we are willing to, settle on maybe the condition.
Right.
So typically.
And that, you have to, if you're wanting to stay in a certain location and it's important for you to be there and it's based on like a school district or your commute to work, like you have to make sure that you're okay with taking something that might need a little bit more work for you to get that. Like there's compromises that have to be made.
Right. Or, and this, this doesn't apply to everything. Obviously, some people come to us with a budget that we're like, wow, we can get you anything in that area.
Right.
But honestly, even the higher price points, we have people all the time who look in Deep Run High School District and it's super competitive. I mean, you honestly.
Yeah, we can get you a townhome.
But like besides a townhome,
a
like
single
we
family
can't.
home is hard.
Yeah, it's minimum $550,000, and so it's like every time I look on that. So I'll tell people, and some people will come and say,
those expectations in the beginning.
they'll say I have no timeline, and I'm like, okay, great. Like we'll keep an eye out over the next 6 months. If anything pops up in your price range, let's go check it out. If nothing does, that tells us that we need to make an adjustment to, again, area or price. So those are all things to think about. And again, going with your minimum, it doesn't mean that if you say you only need 2 beds that we're not going to try and find you a 3rd bedroom, or that if there's a house with a 4th bedroom that we're not going to show it to you as well. We just want to we want to show you the most that we can and give you the most options. And that's one way to do it. Because if you, like Tori said, if you fall in love with a house that, has 1 less bedroom, but that works out for you, that could be best in the long run.
And I've seen that sometimes, like somebody set like on having 2 full bathrooms, and if it's the right house and everything else is like what they need out of a home, they'll go with the 1.5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've done that before too. And I always wonder how it works out, but no one's like called me and, said you were the worst. Why did we do this?
Right.
I also never forced someone to buy a house, but
Yeah. I think it usually results into like the emotional pull.
Yeah, that's true. Buying a house is definitely an emotional thing. And it depends on too, like you could go through, if we are in an area where we've gone through 5-6 offers, we might have to,
and you're ready.
you might need to make that, adjustment because you see that, hey, everyone else is wanting the same thing and we're going, 30,000 Nebraska, can't afford to go any higher kind of a thing. So yeah, that's definitely, sometimes you have to make an adjustment there. I think too, thinking about your first house, like just keeping in mind that compared to where you live now, you're probably, if you're renting, if you're with multiple people, maybe you have 4 bedrooms, but if you're by yourself, you're probably in a 1-bedroom or a studio. Because I don't know, I've never rented where I was like, hey, I got 2 extra rooms in the house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, you're usually paying by rooms if you're renting.
Right, and like we get this
space.
Expectation, like I was saying, like we need the guest room, we need the office, we need, the cat's room, whatever it is. And we're not thinking of, okay, let's compare it to where I'm actually living. In, 2-3 years, I can sell this house, I'll have all this equity, I can get the house that I've been wanting, or I can keep this one, rent it out, and, still, maybe pull out a HELOC and get another house. So your first house is, we want you to love it, we want it to be obviously livable and enjoyable.
We want it to be an investment there.
But yeah, this is your stepping stone. Your parents' house that they're in now was not where they started.
Right, exactly.
They were probably painting walls.
Your first house will not be your forever home.
Right.
It will not be.
Right.
Like, if that happens, wow, you're a rare breed. But
yeah, exactly. We're going to have to put some
home.
sweat equity into it. And so just use it as that. It is a stepping stone to your future. And so, we want you to leverage it as that.
Yeah. And typically, I guess home buyers, what is it, 5? It's 3 to 5, I think, for your first home. How many years you stay in
yeah. It actually used to be like up to 7. Like how long
I
before,
think
but it's
that's
lower
right.
now.
I think
now
it was
it's
like 5 to 7, and now it's back to
like
3 to 5.
Yeah.
That's what the logistics is.
Yeah, Greg and Jesse just did a podcast on that, and they said it's so much lower now. Yeah. So yeah, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, we want to get you to that next step and upgrade you. So that's the gist of what we look for when we're doing a search. And like I said, we can edit it at any time and make it wider, narrow it. Sometimes you're getting too many listings and you're like, I'm looking for something very specific. So yeah, I think that was everything. If you guys,
communication is key, really.
Yeah, letting us know, because it takes us no time to adjust it. And we don't want you getting too many emails or sitting there not, having enough options. So always let us know. If you guys have any suggestions of topics of what you want to know more about, send us a DM or just, hit a comment. Yeah, text us, whatever you want, and we'll be back next week.
Thanks.
Bye. Did you think I was kind of nervous in the beginning?
Well, I just
Oh, this one's not.